This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
GPS, what's happening? Happy Sunday.
How are you? Happy Sunday.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. How about you?
Doing just great. I'm looking forward to this. It's been a while since we've seen each other.
I know. Rumor has it you might have been down in the desert this week.
I go where the work takes me, Mark.
It's a difficult job, but somebody's got to do it, Gary.
It was a lovely event. Rob Lewis and his cohort went out there, and everyone just killed it. It was a ton of fun and a fabulous event at the beautiful Gigi's, which I had never been to before.
Really?
Yeah, back the last time I went to the V, Gigi's did not exist, and the two of the buildings were still under renovation. It's been far too long since I've been out there, so it was a delight to see, and the food was delicious, and the drinks were flowing, and everyone was having a good time. So it was a good event, I think.
Yeah, I love it. I spent a couple of days there recently, and I will tell you, there are few places on earth that are better than Palm Springs in April.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It was, I think, a little warmer for us than it was for you, but still very manageable given what it will be in 2 or 3 months. But it was just delightful to be out there midweek, and we had a grand old time.
I love it. I don't remember. I think I sent you a midweek comment of the week, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. In fact, I've already sent it out. Let me see if I can pull it up here.
Who's the winner? And you already sent out the swag, huh? Swag alert.
I believe that I did. It comes to us from, I believe it's Ryan Evans, 7938. Props Mark at 1730. We could hear an ambulance in the background, and Mr. Garrigus maintained his thoughts and didn't even move towards the door. Just kidding. Always enjoy Sundays. So
I like a good little dig in a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think we both do. And as long as it's cleverly crafted, we can take a joke. Just, come with something intelligent.
I went to a wedding yesterday that was phenomenal with a kind of all the boys and everything. And, ran into, speaking of swag, Tom Ford was there.
Oh, wow.
Who I was amazed at just how preserved and well and fit he looked, and was teasing him that I know people who can afford his suits. I can only occasionally afford one of his ties.
Yeah, I'm I guess not so surprised to hear that he is well and fit and in good spirits. I believe he might have stepped back from his brand and taken a bit of a payday. So I would imagine that will ease the mind a touch.
Yeah, he's
well deserved, by the way. He is a fabulous designer who has been in the trenches for many, many years, and by all means, enjoy the fruits of your work.
Yeah, I was sitting with a woman, Armenian, who had worked for him for many years, and previous to that at Gucci, and she was just wonderful and regaling me with kind of the history of it and everything else. I just thought it was a fascinating kind of glimpse into, he was with Gucci and then jumped out and started his own brand, and just a wonderful success story.
The very little I know about that world is fascinating to me because it is so rich and layered, and it's a small world that reaches a large world, and
it's incredible. I mean, you look at give and take as to the wealthiest men in the world, Bezos and Musk, and then the head of the LVH, which is the French ultra high-end brand.
Yeah, the parent company of Louis Vuitton, who is now owns one of the big Hollywood agencies as well, and that's a wild business.
Yeah, it's incredible to think about and to understand just what's happening there. It's wild. You know what else is wild? And I have been fascinated by has been the jury selection. And let me tell you why I'm fascinated by it, Gary. Having represented various types of clients who are either extremely well thought of in a particular community or the opposite, where they're kind of notorious in a particular community, I'm fascinated by the jury selection for Trump in Manhattan. And I'm not anywhere near as the first nor last to talk about how reviled he is in Manhattan. And if all you have to do is take a look at the jury selection process and the number of people who just initially said they couldn't be fair. There was one interesting interview that I saw. I think you clipped. Do you have it?
Yes, I do. It's right here. We'll go ahead and take a look at it.
She runs a VC fund here in Manhattan for folks that are over 60 years of age. She was just dismissed as a potential juror. What happened? Why were you dismissed?
Because I couldn't be impartial.
You couldn't be impartial. So when the judge asked that hand, can you be impartial? You raised your hand and you said you cannot.
Exactly.
Wow. When did you first come?
On Tuesday.
On Tuesday. And at that point, when did you realize that this was a trial involving the ex-president of the United States, Donald Trump?
So we were here on Tuesday from 9 a.m.
Yeah.
But we realized that it's about this case on 4 p.m. We went into the courtroom and we showed Donald Trump.
You went into the courtroom at 4 p.m. on Tuesday
exactly.
And you see Donald Trump.
Yeah, we didn't know before that.
What was your first thought?
I was shocked. I was sitting on the second row, like 6 feet away. And when I realized that Trump is there, I was like, oh, wow. I couldn't believe it.
What about the people around you?
Everybody was shocked. Everybody was frozen. No, like frozen, no expressions, nothing. We were all,
Did he
that was
look,
the case.
Did he look back at you? Did any of the attorneys look back at you at that time?
Sometimes Trump would turn his head.
Yeah.
But that was it, yeah. He didn't stand up or anything.
Were you following the case before this?
I didn't really. I'm too busy.
You're too busy, but you knew he was on trial, or you knew he was going to trial.
Yeah, it's just the headlines, but yeah, too busy to read the details.
Have you ever served as a juror before?
No, that's my first time because I just became a citizen in August.
Yeah.
And that was my first call. And that
so
was,
you just became a citizen of the United States. So that means you've never voted in a presidential election.
Exactly.
You get called to be a juror, and this is the jury that you are called to.
Yes.
What was that? Is unbelievable. That is unbelievable.
I know.
Now, Mark, I have a question here for you as someone who recently went through this process shortly after I started working for you. And it was several days back and forth driving to the Orange County courthouse. And it was very annoying. They did something that I think is somewhat unprecedented or certainly very rare. The judge announced before jury selection started that he was going to ask each juror if they could be impartial. And without reason, if your answer was no, I cannot be impartial, you were just automatically dismissed. God, I wish that was an option for me when I was sitting in that courthouse in Orange County. Is that?
I was a little surprised by that because a lot of the things the judge has done in trying to impanel a jury, I have been a fan of. Not only the questioning and then what he, as I understand it, part of what he was doing at a certain point is what we used to do in California, which was called Hovey voir dire, which named after a case, and that was in special circumstance cases, is you would do it jurors one by one. And one of the reasons for doing that is you want to get them to be honest. And at the same time, if they're honest, you don't want them to pollute the rest of the jury pool. And so back in the 80s, 70s, that was a thing in California. And he was doing that here. But as you mentioned, when he was bringing in the panel, that apparently what was happening, which is kind of self-selecting, if you will. If you say, I can't be impartial, you want to delve into that a little bit, and you don't want people self-selecting out. Like this juror that they just showed, I don't know. I didn't question. I don't know much about her background other than what she just said in that little interview. But mind you, one of the interesting things about jury selection is you never really know all that much about a juror. If you in terms of how much time you get for them. Last jury trial I did back in February, the judge there in a federal case gave me the ability to voir dire, which is rare. And in this case, This is a juror that I think from a defense standpoint, you would probably, at least you would not want to excuse immediately. You'd want to have a conversation with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we only played a few minutes of it there because we don't want to play extended clips here and bore the audience. But she does go on to explicitly state that she is a Trump supporter and would have leaned towards his side of things. So that's got to be difficult as a defense attorney if people are clearly going to side your way and they are allowed to self-excuse.
Yeah, and it drives you crazy as a defense lawyer when somebody self-selects out, because at the same time, you know that there are other people. There was a woman, for instance, and this gets kind of into sequestration and whether you should have sequestration. Somebody tweeted at me because I had commented on one of the channels that in cases like this, you really need sequestration. It's the only time you can get an acquittal if you were on the defense. And I had cited Casey Anthony, had cited the OJ case, and somebody had tweeted me, what about Michael Jackson? Michael Jackson, you have to understand, is a completely different situation. I remember having done Scott Peterson and Michael Jackson at the same time. The amount of hatred and prejudgment rate of guilt from Scott Peterson was off the charts. I mean, I tell this story about it collapsed my website at the time because people were just the venom and vitriol that came in. At roughly the same time when Michael Jackson was being prosecuted, it was the complete opposite. The support and the good wishes and everything else, completely the opposite, the mirror image. So maybe I'll take that tweet at me and I will say, yes, good point. When you're dealing with infamy or people who are up against it in a jurisdiction, sequestration makes a difference. And why do I say that? One of the jurors who had been seated in this case came back the following day, as I understand it, and it said that people were guessing that she was a juror, and she no longer felt like she could be impartial because of the public outcry about it. Maybe you've got it. I
do have a clip here of a reporter discussing it here. Let's check it out.
One of the jurors called up the court to inform them that she did not know whether she could actually be fair and impartial. She was asked to come to court this morning and went before.
To be clear, this was a juror who had already been seated.
For the defense and went before the district attorney's office and answered questions about how she got to that conclusion. And she said, in part, that she got calls just yesterday alone from, quote, friends, colleagues, and family, quote, questioning my identity as a juror. She continued, I don't believe I can be fair and unbiased and let the outside influences not affect me in the courtroom. This hits at the heart of the difficulty for these jurors over the course of the next 6 to 8 weeks. These are individuals who, they are anonymous, yet we and the sides have some details about who these individuals are, their neighborhoods, their occupation.
Right.
Yeah, and that's precisely the point. I've run into that. I can't tell you how many times in high-profile cases. If you have jurors who go back out in the community and it is a case where there is a prejudgment rate of guilt, judgment, meaning they do, and I'm sure because there were, it appears to me to be jury consultants that were employed on both sides of the aisle here. It appears to me one of the things jury consultants do is they will run mock juries, they will do focus groups, and yeah, I would be shocked if there wasn't a focus groups that showed that the prejudgment rate for guilt wasn't off the charts in this case. And when that's the case, you cannot let jurors place them back into the community day after day, because somebody is going to figure out at some point that they're a juror. And even though the juror is told you can't talk to people, that order does not apply to their friends, their neighbors, and family members. And those people are going to gratuitously interfere with this person's ability to remain fair and neutral. I remember one juror being removed on a case that I had. He had been deliberating for 7 days and told the judge on the record, I'm not sure I can be fair anymore, and that I wouldn't be giving the verdict that was wanted by the community as opposed to what was based on the evidence in the courtroom.
Well, you certainly don't want that for, I would think, for either side. I mean, that's, No,
prosecutors always say, oh, no, we want a fair. They don't want a fair and just. If they did that, if that was the case, you wouldn't allow prosecutors to have peremptory challenges. I mean, I think that's one of the ways to solve the problem. And we've had so much litigation, so many court cases, so many things about prosecutors using peremptory challenges based on race, ethnicity, things of that nature. I mean, prosecutors who have a higher duty than the defense, you've heard me talk about that repeatedly. Prosecutors shouldn't have the same number of peremptory challenges or peremptory challenges at all. The defense should have peremptory challenges to even the playing field, so to speak. Prosecutors, they should not have that. They can make for-cause challenges after that. They shouldn't have a peremptory challenge. They should just take whoever they get if they really believe it's the community. Otherwise, why is a prosecutor excusing people without any excuse?
Well, before we get to, I have a specific question for you about peremptory challenges, but before we get to that, there was one other juror that was sworn in and dismissed, and this person did an on-camera interview. You want to check that out?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to let you meet another dismissed juror here who I just met a few moments ago. This is Mark. Mark, you are one of those individuals, correct me if I'm wrong, who rose your hand this morning and said you would not be able to be fair and impartial. How did that play out?
We were summoned in. The judge read all the particulars of the case, how one was supposed to evaluate the law and the evidence. And then he said, if there's a reason that you don't think you could be impartial or that you could be perceived as biased, that you should raise your hand. So I raised my hand because I was certain that even if, and intellectually I would be capable of being unbiased, that because I have satirized Mr. Trump often in my artwork, that this would come to light. And that were I to be seated on the trial, it would be dishonest for me to withhold that information. But there'd be no way that Blanche, who's not going to rely on the kindness of strangers, would permit me to be on the jury.
Would you describe to me what you saw with Donald Trump while you were sitting inside of that courtroom?
Not very much. He was a bit ahead of me and off to the left. I didn't have a complete view of him today. He's sort of plopped in a chair. You can see the orange. But I was not close to him.
Did you see him turn around and look at the juror?
No.
Potential jurors at any point?
No, there are quite a few people in the room. And I didn't stare at him the whole time. I glanced at him a number of times. But I did not see him turning around and looking at anybody at that point. The next phase, as the judge explained it, would be that if you were going to be a potential juror, there would be more of a questionnaire for you to fill out and that you would be interviewed. I thought, this is ridiculous. There's no way after my online presence, where I've satirized this man again and again, that I would be fit to, they would regard me as to be fit to serve, and it would be a waste of their time. And frankly, as a taxpayer, our money for me to clog up the process that way.
So you were an honest man and you rose your hand and you had your opportunity to see the former president of the United States there for that quick moment, but you bypassed the potential opportunity to try to be a juror.
I did.
Mark, good talking with you.
Hey everybody, what's up? It's Gina Grad. And when you're searching for the perfect piece of jewelry, it can be hard to find a brand you trust. Alex and Ani has been creating meaningful jewelry for over 20 years, designing pieces that connect you with all of life's important moments. With an emphasis on value, there is truly something for everyone. They've recently launched their everyday collection, I could not love it more. These pieces are made from stainless steel and an advanced water-resistant plating method that doesn't tarnish. It has the look of real gold. It's beautiful. I love these pieces because they feel so classic, but they have so much versatility. Alex and Ani are also featuring some gorgeous pieces that I have right here, like Black Lotus, this gorgeous Black Lotus charm necklace, and their Stay Wild pendant, and their Wings of Protection necklace that have a classic and vintage feel. See that? And of course, you can't forget their signature bangle bracelets, which I'm also wearing. And I have a lot of their stuff. I have the numerology bracelets. I have the hula dancer to commemorate a meaningful trip I took to Hawaii. From classic to bold statement pieces, Alex and Ani makes it easy to sprinkle your personality into each piece or make a truly meaningful gift for someone you care about. Meanwhile, you can take comfort in knowing that you're shopping with a socially conscious brand, as Alex and Ani has donated over $60 million to nonprofits worldwide, connecting fashion and philanthropy in an easy, fun, affordable way. Right now, Alex and Ani is offering our audience 20% off. So check their gorgeous collection out at alexandani.com and use the promo code MIDAS. That's MEIDAS at alexandani.com. Use that promo code at checkout for 20% off your order. Come and get something beautiful.
That's an example that undercuts my self-selection theory, because there's somebody who was honest and said, obviously, and by the way, when he said Blanche relying on the kindness of strangers, he's talking about Todd Blanche, who was one of the two lead defense lawyers, along with Susan Nicholas, who's tremendous, who represent Trump, and was doing a little bit of a lilt, which I think was an imitation of Todd. But yes, he's right. He would have been a waste of time. That's not somebody the defense would ever take.
Correct. So to the point of preemptory challenges that you were talking about earlier, we do have some information here on where the jurors who have ended up being seated are getting their news. So my question to you is, you can see here in this image that is highlighted that juror number 2 lists Truth Social as one of the primary places that they get their news. That's the only person on the jury who lists that as a there's one more, I believe. No, that's the only juror. I'm sorry. They also get their information from Twitter or X. But I wanted to ask you, why do you think that this person would have been let through by the prosecutors? Because that just seems, were they out of preemptory challenges possibly? That just seems like the absolute wrong person. And it seems like it's leading to a 12 angry men, hung jury, where this person's probably unlikely to be swayed to the way of thinking of the 11 other jurors.
So let me tell you, when you take a look at this chart, and I apologize to people who aren't looking at it.
I don't apologize to them. Go to youtube.com/reasonable doubt podcast, subscribe, and watch this thing like you should be. No apologies.
And make a comment. You may get swag this
Exactly.
week.
It's a win-win.
So it's interesting that you've got one juror whose primary source is MSNBC, one juror primary source Fox News, one juror, it looks like, for Truth Social, as you just mentioned. Is that right, Gary?
Looks right to me.
Truth Social, if I may, and they also get their news from Twitter. That is somebody that, for the prosecution, you're absolutely right. That would stick out. One of the reasons that I think that peremptories for prosecutors should be outlawed, because if you truly are saying, I want a representative cross-section of the community, you would think that 1 out of 12 you should be able to have, or, if you're picking 6 alternates, 1 out of 18. Interesting here, the number of people, New York Times, it's almost across the board, with the exception of what it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 who don't use New York Times. Only 1 New York Post, it looks like. And TikTok, you've got 2, which is interesting. You can tell an awful lot about the makeup of this jury from the primary news sources that they've listed here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. For instance, those TikTok people, they both also appear to get their news from Google and one of them from Facebook. So if I'm guessing, those people are of the younger demographic, probably much younger than me even. So there's a lot to be learned here. The New York Times thing stuck out less to me because this is a jury of Manhattan residents. So that made a little bit more sense to me. It seems like that is a publication that is still pretty prevalent, for the people that live in those jurisdictions.
Right. And then you've got two jurors, primary source CNN, one CNBC, which is interesting.
Yep.
The CNBC, potentially, if you go down, Gary, they're also CNBC,
BBC,
New York Times, right?
Yeah, and BBC and Wall Street Journal. So to me, that's a financial guy. That's someone who works in that industry. And
as you saw, one of that woman who was a new citizen is, I believe she was also in finance.
Yeah, I believe she ran a fund for elderly people.
Right. Watch yourself.
No, I'm sorry. For people who are over 60. That's an unfair term. Elderly. My mother will be calling me about that comment.
Elderly. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Gary. No. My mother, I will get it from you. I'm sure I'll get it from my mother and father. I apologize. That was an incorrect term.
Yeah. And so I think that if you take a look, broad brush, you'd have to know a couple of other things, but broad brush, that juror, the CNBC juror, the Truth Social juror, the New York Post juror is also interesting to me because they're Wall Street Journal, New York Post, New York Times,
Washington Post, and WNYC.
Yeah, that's an interesting juror to me.
Yeah, that's a wide swath. It's it's interesting too to me that the ones we've highlighted are all in the actual jury pool and they're not necessarily alternates. The alternates, there's less of a swath. I think it's interesting that one of the alternates is Facebook and Washington Post. That's a weird combination to me, but okay. But yeah, it appears there's a couple on here that if I'm a prosecutor, I would be a little bit concerned about.
Yep. It's tough in these cases because of the public and kind of the fishbowl nature of it. There, as much as you try to keep the jurors anonymous, their friends and family are going to figure it out immediately. And so when that happens, the amount of pressure can be unbearable. That's why I argue that in a case like this, the only way to keep this thing fair is sequestration. And obviously, I don't know, maybe we'll hear from somebody that can comment on whether or not anybody's made the motion, whether that's been denied. But I think a lot of the criticism of this judge has been unfair because I've also got a close, dear friend who has practiced criminal law as long as I have, who was very close to the proceedings. And she and I were talking about just how uniquely bending over backwards this judge has been in trying to impanel a fair jury. The problem with that is, though, and I've also said that, it's this idea that you've got to get this case tried prior to the election irks me. And there's nothing, I've made this argument a zillion times in completely different contexts. But why is it that the prosecution gets the entire statute of limitations period of time in which to bring the case? But once they bring the case, it's on your mark, get set, go for the defense. And the defense is supposed to play catch up and the prosecution determines when the case gets tried. And it seems fundamentally unfair to me.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch over the next few weeks. We'll certainly be keeping a close eye on it, and we will be coming to you again next Sunday with more analysis. Mark, thank you so much for your time this Sunday.
Gary, it's the best. Go have fun.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day. Bye-bye, all.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt Podcast.